Hello, everyone. We have a very interesting guest today, and I'm going to try and pronounce his name the right way, which is in French. So, because he's a French Canadian. So, welcome, Marc-André Tart.
Woo, pretty
Uh,
good.
yeah, I practiced once before we started recording, but welcome. Luckily for us, he speaks perfect English, so we're going to continue our conversation in English. But to welcome him, I practiced my French accent. Hi, Mark.
Well done, Valeria.
Tell us the story of how you ended up being in slopestyle and big air. And I was never able to do big air. For me, that's just out of my reach. I'm more speed.
Yeah, good question. I guess I was always into the individual sports, which for me started when I was a young teenager, and maybe even before that. But my neighbor had a trampoline, one of those big round trampolines, and I would go over at the end of the after school, and I would jump for hours every day, and I would learn, and I would push myself, and I would spend time by myself on the trampoline. Loved it. And then I had good friends, and we all started, well, we were all skiing. I started skiing when I was 2.5. So at this point I started snowboarding when I was 14. So this must have been that I was, early teens, maybe 12, where my friends and I would go skiing after school, or our parents would drop us off at the ski resort. I grew up in a very small town where, in high school, for example, the amount of students was about 200. So small high school, and people came from 45 minutes away. So it was common for us to have our parents drop us off at the local ski resort and then pick us up at the end. And they and I just jumped. It's what there was this on the side hits of the piece. There was a little place where you could go fast and enjoy your speed, but also jump and catch some air. And then eventually we just pushed that, and one did a trick, or a daffy, a spread eagle, a twister, a spread, you name it. And then the other one tried to do it as well. Eventually we did 360s. And by the time I started snowboarding, if I could line myself up to the tiny jumps that we built or that we found, I'd be able to do a 360. But sometimes I missed the jump because I wasn't that good at snowboarding yet. So it really stemmed from skiing for me, the freestyle aspect. I started rollerblading, actually, and because rollerblades seemed very similar to skiing, it was everything transitioned. So my 360s, all of a sudden I could do, and I was actually sponsored as a rollerblader before I was sponsored as a snowboarder. Not that many people know this. And so actually I could do misty flips and rodeo flips because of the trampoline background on the rollerblades. And I did my first backflip on a rollerblade and then tried it on the snowboard. So I transitioned from trampoline to rollerblades to snowboarding, which is kind of strange. And the first competition that I won, I guess, I won a pair of gloves. And it soon escalated to me traveling to Mont-Tremblant, a big resort in Quebec, where I did an invitational competition, and I just showed up and they let me do it. And then the next year, I did it again, and I had made the finals. And when I showed up, they said, "Oh, this is invitational only. You have to get an invitation." And I said, "Oh, darn it. I drove all this way." Wait a minute. I did it last year and I made the finals. I said, "Oh, really? Oh, well, that's grounds to be invited." Okay. And then from that point on, I just slid right in there. And from that point on, I was doing invitational events. So every time they said it's an invitational big air, oh, yeah, I do those. Yeah, I've been doing those. Yeah. So I my limits were the limits of snowboarding. So basically, that's what I was. And that was my favorite part of snowboarding, was the fact that freestyle was new, and everything that I was discovering and trying was something that in some instances people had done before. So I was trying to do something I've seen in a video or something that one of my friends would do. But at one point I would try something new for me. And sometimes something new for me was something that I had never seen. And in some instances, some of the things that I had done for me that I had never seen were something that nobody had ever done snowboarding. So in 2002, I did the first 1260 in the history of snowboarding. And that was just me focusing on myself. What can I do? How can I do that? I can't do my normal 540 and 900, but I'm really good at my 720 and my 1080s. So what's the next step up? Well, it'll be the doing some switch or cab 1080s, which is basically switch frontside 1080s. And I actually was able to, so many stories are jumbling together in my mind. But I had traveled to Costa Rica to learn to surf, and I drove from Whistler to Costa Rica in my pickup truck with a friend, and we had a canopy on the back, so we slept in the back. It was an exciting part of my life. And during this trip to Costa Rica, not only did I get invited to a snowboard competition in the UK, at which point where I went over super tanned and bronzed and had a rental, it wasn't even rental, a loaner snowboard and loaner snowboard gear to do the event because I didn't have any snowboard gear on me. But on the way there, we went through San Diego, and there was a trade show, a surf trade show. I can't remember the name now. You into surfing? You know what's ASR trade show. And there was a snowboard video premiere, which was it MacDog or TB? One of the bigger American company films that I had watched since I was a kid. And all of a sudden, I was in the intro, and it was my cab 1080 that I had done in the snowboard competition in Whistler, where it was my last jump. I had my jacket up top, and I just figured, I'll just put my jacket on above the bib. I zipped it up and I did my cab 1080. So it didn't look like an event competition because there wasn't a bib on. And they put it in the movie without asking me. I was thrilled about it. So that was my big thing, the cab 1080s. Nobody had done that before. It was one of the first ones ever. Throughout the years, I've learned a lot because I needed to find a way to be successful, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to achieve, I wanted to be successful, but I didn't always know how and how I would do it because I didn't have a coach. I didn't have the ability to follow a path, because what I was doing was something that nobody did before, as far as I could tell. And so when I didn't do good at a competition, I didn't win every competition. And when I did good at a competition, I think I didn't learn that much. But when I failed at a competition is when I realized I had to really figure out, what did I do? I wrote down what I was thinking, how the thoughts translated into success. How could I have done better? How will I do better next time? Where did I lose it? Where did I lose track? Why, So it was a very intensive time for me to figure out how to be successful with myself. And when you take it down a notch to just trying your next trick, sometimes you always have to adapt.
I love the point that you defined success for yourself. You weren't, chasing the success of somebody else's definition. You shaped it yourself and you went for it. And what I also like is that you allowed yourself to experience all the different aspects of life and different sports. And I also think that drives the artfulness, of the way you approach a sport. Because I think when you're kind of tunnel visioned on just one sport and you're practicing day and night without having a perspective of different movement, different cultures, different perspectives of even seeing your own sport, you're not able to see the full picture. But once you allow yourself to go, just like your trip from Whistler to Costa Rica, how many people have done that? And just the event of you seeing accidentally yourself at some show, especially the sport that you're not even that closely related to, what are the odds? And I think that those chances of you being open to new different things and being so artistic in your skill of life, I guess, of your skill of living life, I think gives you more opportunities than a person who is just focused on one thing and is not allowing, sometimes they call it distractions, but I call it opportunities.
I like that. I like that.
At some point you had to leave snowboarding or the professional sport as you knew it for over a decade. What happened there? How and why did that stop and go into a new way of living?
That was definitely not my choice. Towards the end of my career, I became plagued with injuries. And the injuries, I got hurt more than most people will in their whole lives. Let's see a few. One, before I was a professional, I broke 4 arms, my radius ulna in both my arms, in one crash. That was the first big one that alerted my family to what was going to come up for the rest of my life. I had a few concussions near together, nearby, when I was competing. One of the major ones was I had a dislocated hip. I did one of the biggest errors in a quarter pipe, which wasn't my forte, as you would say in English. But I tried to do one of the first ever double flips into a quarter pipe, and I landed on basically the first one I landed right in, but I sat down and I thought, okay, I've got this, just a bit more speed. So I went way higher and I landed just on the edge, and my knee came up. I don't know if you can see well, but my knee came up and head-butted me. It killed one of my teeth, like just bent it back so there was no circulation anymore, and it knocked me out. And that hit my knee in my face, and gave me a concussion again, dislocated, and it didn't hurt whatsoever.
And
so that would be sorry, I keep elaborating. So that would be the beginning of the end. And then eventually I had a few other injuries, like a broken hand, and eventually it's my sponsor that more pulled out, because I was getting hurt a lot and the industry started to go downhill a little bit. And obviously I wasn't winning everything anymore. I still had a good name. I still was well represented. And they actually did fire me, and I was able to hold on to my paycheck because I wasn't getting so much from the competitions anymore, but at a way lesser amount. And then eventually that gravitated towards, you're not really making it into the top podiums anymore. You've gotten hurt a lot. You're getting hurt a lot, and it was kind of taken away from me, which was difficult because it was very from one day to the, it felt very quick, but all of a sudden I had the weight of having a mortgage to pay that for the first time ever weighed down on me. And I had to decide, well, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? I can't go to live in a fishing village in Thailand for a year to meditate and figure it out. I have a mortgage to pay. Well, I guess I could rent it out. But so, you know what I mean? Like I had responsibilities for the first time that didn't come with an automatic paycheck that I just deferred back to this and I'm doing my thing. It was big decisions that had to be made all of a sudden. I guess I had to grow up somewhat, and that's when somehow at some point I got involved with an airbag company. I became a partner with an airbag company from Europe. Um, it was Bag Jump, and it's a one of the most predominant airbag companies now that makes impact absorption devices for freestyle sports training. And I was involved in designing the first ever of the new age airbags that was created, which I sold the first of through my connections of snowboarding to Windell's, which is also operating from Mount Hood in the U.S. And then I did for a little while. I did business and snowboarding. I was still getting my minute paycheck, and then I was able to invest into a Transworld Business um, ad in the Transworld Business yearly magazine. And that's how I transitioned to, due to injuries, and my sponsors pulling out, and then somehow I went on a trip to Serbia, and where I broke my hand, and Bag Jump was doing a training, a show, an event, and that's when we decided, hey, you're getting older, Mark, you're not getting any younger, why don't you focus on selling airbags? Like, well, hey, pushing yourself without risk of injury, what a great idea. I could totally get behind that. Pushing your limits, oh, I'm like, this calls out my name, perfect. And then unfortunately, about a year later, we divorced, and that's when I started Acrobag, which eventually led to the Acrobag Progression Tour, which was me and people I've hired or friends that have toured around North America. At the beginning, it was 8 ski resorts in Canada and 8 ski resorts in the US. Some of them were double booked, and making it happen, and basically driving from Whistler to the East Coast and around the East Coast and back to Whistler. So over 40,000 kilometers, and in the winter, and you name it. And and building jumps into airbags, coaching every kid that jumps in, making sure everybody's safe, nobody gets hurt, sharing my passion with progression with all these kids, and having an 8-year-old that jumps back up and lands a backflip, and within a couple jumps there does a double backflip, and never thought he would do this today, and then comes to you, looks at you in the eyes and says, Mark, this was the best day in my life, thank you so much. It warms your heart, and so that's what then eventually led me to Progression Airbags, which is the big airbag company that I run now, that makes landing airbags for, mostly our clients are either ski resorts like Mammoth Mountain, or national teams like Canadian. Well, there's 2 in Canada, but Maximize Canada Olympic Park was one of our clients. Snow Sports New Zealand, the Chinese national team, they got 4 in an indoor facility. So we basically now we cater to elite level of pushing your limits of snowboarding, of elite events such as Olympics and things like that. So that was a very long-winded answer to your question of how I transitioned from sports to business. What I've always told myself from back in the rollerblading days, if I learned how to do it, I know how to teach it. I can, and not everybody does that. I mean, you see, I can imagine, I don't know if I see, but I can imagine big 40-year-old Russian guys teaching 14-year-old gymnastics girls. Obviously, they can't do what they could do, but they can understand and they can say how to do it. But for me, it really came as I figured this out. I understood how the mechanism of my biomechanics worked. And because I understood it and could envision it, I can share it. I can explain it. I can, and that's something that was always well, that I always felt very strongly about how great it was to be able to understand the the motion of my body in three-dimensional space. And so to be able to share it with kids, and no matter what the age, that the kid gets it and progresses so quickly within a couple hours with me, I got to relive other kids' passions. It was amazing. I have goosebumps. I have goosebumps just thinking about it now.
I wanted to go back to the passion. I can see the passion in your business right now. And I think the passion is probably what gets you going when you're going over the hurdles with the business, because whenever you're progressing, there's always going to be some difficulty that you need to overcome, because without it, there's no progress. And then another thing is that you mentioned, we just briefly covered in the beginning of the conversation, that you haven't been associating yourself with artists in the usual sense of it, maybe painting or music or, I don't know, poetry, but creating a product, creating the airbag is creation. There's art
Mhm.
to it, there's a design to it, there's so much work that goes into it. And first of all, there's the vision first, right? The vision, the idea comes first, that then materializes. And I think a lot of the times people neglect that part of them, that they are artists of business, because it's easy to resell the product that has been already proven, that already existed, and people love and recognize it. It's a completely different task and skill to be able to create something, make it pleasing to the consumer, and then make it even better and evolve. And so there are so many faces to the business that people don't give themselves credit for, and one of them is the creation, the envision, the materialization. I think it's something that has to be admired. Well, I admire that in entrepreneurs and business owners.
Oh, awesome. Well, that I appreciate that. And again, it's a breath of fresh air to talk to you about this, and to even introspect a little bit into my own artistic background. So how are you involved artistically then? How is your I mean, this is what you're doing right now, right? You're leading the way with professional, well, from what I understand, professional athletes that have turned in entrepreneurs or into the business side, or how and when they transitioned to the business side of things. So that's very artistic in the way of creating something new.
No athlete's story has ever left me untouched, in the sense
Mm-hmm.
of my heart is always with the story, because I always relate to one part or the other, because um, there's no path to greatness without learning from mistakes and overcoming
Hardship. Yeah.
difficulties. Yep. Yeah. And so some pain points that I used to have, attached me to people in their past pro sports lives, or something that they've experienced in entrepreneurship. I'm like, oh yeah, I thought that too. Oh, I actually went through that as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So it's nice to be able to relate.
for
And
sure.
it seems that what you're doing is quite great. So I will be in touch with. I have a few directions already that um, maybe a lead for you. I know somebody who wants to buy a business right now, so that could be helpful
Sure.
for both parties.
Yeah,
And then maybe who knows? Maybe you'll be able to help me out.
for sure. I always love my athletes, so let's stay in touch. Thanks so much, Mark.
Thank you. Have a
Okay.
nice day.
You too. Thank you. Bye.